education sector has a number of data systems, especially the education monitoring information system, but this system is more about reporting. So reporting to the national level. So the idea is that we go in, we understand what are the gaps within this data system in the education sector within Africa, and then we try to find a way on how we can work with the different stakeholders to strengthen the system that is in place. And that means we look at the operability of the system, we look at the indicators, whether they are enough to inform planning and policy. So basically, by and large, that is what the project is about. For this KIX project, we are trying to look at what is that data, what are those indicators, especially at the school level or at the subnational level, that is especially for the decentralized system. What are those indicators that are available within the health facilities, within the school facilities or at the primary school, and are not being captured within the electronic database? When we talk about education, we don't want to assume that all students are progressing at the same pace. So within this particular project, the KIX-SEEDS, we are actually intentional in looking at what we are calling gender equity and inclusion. So we understand that there could be differences in terms of progression of how students progress through their academic career.
Within the GEI, or Gender Equality and Inclusivity component of the KIX-SEEDS education improvement, especially in the 3 countries that we are focusing on, we hope that those inequalities that exist within the systems and structures that communities or students or pupils experience, and the unique dynamics makes them vulnerable to not completing school, to staying out of school or leaving school and going into employment. And a lot of the time, most of these out of school children and youth that drop out early in terms of not completing education, there is a huge gap in the lack of understanding of what happens to those individuals that are left out within the system, because they are vulnerable because of the unique experiences that they face, whether it's the access to resources, whether it's due to their disability or conflict, and that comes in various forms. So within KIX, we aim to address the key gaps around out-of-school children, understanding what happens to out-of-school children, understanding the vulnerabilities around the education system, the norms that exist that keep perhaps girls out of school, or actually advance the fact that more boys are likely to drop out of school within the youthful ages before they complete school, and whether they stay in that position, and how that puts them at a disadvantage in terms of access to income and employment opportunities because of the lack of education.
We did some scoping review. We did a scoping review before we selected these countries. Of course, we worked with different partners, especially our funder, which is APHRC. And then we looked at countries that have some of the glaring challenges, especially in terms of the education sector. We are intentional, especially for West African countries, Burkina Faso and Senegal. We are really intentional, one, because we have offices there, nearby there, but we are trying to leverage on existing networks within these countries, because we have been working with in these countries on other projects that are focusing on the education sector. So instead of going to different places, we are saying, since we already have networks in these countries, we have already created some rapport. Why not continue to work with those partners? But most importantly, this project is called a scaling project. We are not starting from scratch, so we are scaling actually. So specifically like for Uganda, the partner that we have selected actually was implemented the KIX 1.0. This one is KIX 2.0. So we have said we have already made some investments. So when I say we, it's not APHRC only, but we are looking at APHRC and the partners because we work with our partners. So since there has been a KIX 1.0, which initially was trying to look at what data systems are in place, what are the gaps, and what can we do, what approaches can we use. So we are saying this one we can scale it, either go into other districts or strengthen. So it's the same thing that we are doing for Burkina Faso and for Senegal.
At HISP Uganda, as we are implementing DHIS2 for education, we have in-country Uganda projects and also beyond outside Uganda in more like 6 countries. For Uganda implementation, we are doing pilot in 4 districts. Gulu, Mayuge, Tungamo, and Wakiso. And in that pilot is being supported by KIX-SEEDS and NORAD.
At the subnational level and specifically looking at scaling through this data value chain, once data is available, then the most other important and critical aspect is to make sure we generate demand for it. What we really think and what we really see is to create an avenue where we can advocate for using this data for policy formulation at various levels. And of course that advocacy, I think, like I mentioned earlier, requires a sort of a multi-sectoral approach where you have different players and stakeholders participate in these processes. I think we need to kind of create an environment where we ask questions that help planners, for example, to plan based on data. We have a grant that is given to schools back home. It's called the capitation grant. If they're going to plan for that, are they planning for it based on the information that they have that is valid? Are they planning or based on the political environment? Because there's also that challenge, like I told you. There's the interest of the politicians and the interest of the technical implementers. So we think that really empowering the source to generate this data is the beginning point. And then to realize the success of this data value chain has to bring in now the stakeholders at subnational level and then also at national level to start realizing the value that we get from using data.
En termes des gaps que nous pouvons relever dans le système éducatif au Burkina, surtout sur le volet production des données, il faut noter que nous ciblons déjà des communes. Et les communes sont les entités administratives les plus petites qui puissent exister au Burkina. Et dans ces communes, il n'existe pas en réalité un système de production sophistiqué des statistiques d'éducation. Les communes ont en réalité ce que nous appelons les CCEB, qui sont en fait des circonscriptions d'éducation de base et qui compilent les informations de base. Quand je dis informations de base, c'est des informations agrégées et qui sont envoyées au niveau central pour traitement et diffusion sur des plateformes au niveau national. Et ces données qui sont envoyées sont en réalité traitées à des niveaux agrégés, ne donnant pas lieu en fait à une publication au niveau local. Donc il s'agit là d'un gap qui pose effectivement la difficulté d'accès à l'information, surtout au niveau le plus fin possible. Et en plus de ces gaps, il faut relever qu'au niveau communal, la transmission de ces données se fait généralement à travers des fichiers numériques Mais au préalable, la collecte, elle est faite sur des papiers. Et on essaie de compiler en réalité ces données et ensuite les envoyer. Elles sont sujettes à beaucoup d'erreurs et ne donnent pas forcément lieu à un détail tenant compte surtout des catégories socio-économiques et des caractéristiques en fait des apprenants, sans toutefois oublier également des enseignants. Et du coup, ces gaps sont nécessaires effectivement à connaître et à mieux appréhender dans la mise en œuvre du projet afin effectivement d'éviter ou d'améliorer du moins, de relever les défis en la matière et améliorer la productivité en termes de données d'éducation. Pourquoi nous le disons? Parce que nous voulons en réalité apporter un dispositif qui permettra d'améliorer déjà les performances scolaires et ensuite qui permettra de mettre en lumière les différents efforts, les gaps et également les insuffisances au niveau de l'éducation pour les communes dans lesquelles nous voulons implémenter le projet.
Dans le cadre de ce projet, l'ECA est un partenaire local de mise en œuvre qui doit travailler pour la mise sur place d'un système d'information de données sur l'éducation pour avoir des données désagrégées qui pourront servir aux collectivités territoriales dans le cadre de leur politique de planification locale. Et la finalité, c'est que ce projet puisse aller à l'échelle et être utile à des niveaux supérieurs au niveau d'expérimentation. C'est un projet qui est très pertinent et qui vient à son heure dans la mesure où au Sénégal on a une gouvernance qui se base sur la décentralisation et donc les secteurs tels que l'éducation qui sont des compétences qui sont transférées. Lorsqu'on doit mettre sur place un projet de ce genre pour avoir des données à un niveau désagrégé, donc je trouve que c'est très pertinent pour le Sénégal par rapport à son contexte de politique publique, mais aussi par rapport à ses engagements dans la politique publique de l'État, mais aussi à ses engagements au niveau africain et au niveau international dans le cadre des ODD. En termes de résultats positifs qui pourront être très intéressants dans le cadre de ce projet, c'est qu'au niveau des collectivités territoriales où on va l'expérimenter, les élus, à savoir les maires, mais aussi les partenaires locaux, auront des informations très détaillées sur le secteur de l'éducation et ces informations vont leur permettre de pouvoir retravailler sur leurs orientations pour le développement de l'éducation. Les enseignants et les directeurs d'école aussi auront une visibilité sur les choses peut-être qui pourraient être améliorées dans le cadre de leur secteur. Et ça va être intéressant pour la commune, pour les projets et ONG ou bien les organisations communautaires qui travaillent au niveau local, mais aussi pour l'État central parce que sa réussite au niveau des communes pourra être élargie maintenant à d'autres communes et donc dans ce sens, ça va être très intéressant. Le message ou bien l'appel en tout cas que je voudrais faire aux autorités, c'est que normalement la planification des questions de développement au niveau macro doit partir des expériences réussies au niveau micro. Et nous avons cette chance, c'est que l'ESEA est une institution de recherche appliquée. Donc ce que nous avons réfléchi théoriquement et que nous enseignons, nous le pratiquons sur le terrain. Dans ce moment-là, on peut dire que si on l'a bien conçu théoriquement et qu'on l'a bien appliqué dans une commune et que ça réussit, c'est seulement en ce moment-là qu'on a la certitude que lorsque l'État central veut l'utiliser au niveau macro, il est sûr et certain que si les moyens de l'expérimentation sont mis en œuvre, on aura une réussite sur l'ensemble du territoire. Et donc je pense que c'est une opportunité pour le gouvernement et les autorités de prendre ça en charge, ce qui leur permettrait d'avoir en tout cas un dispositif beaucoup plus efficace et efficient pour l'atteinte des objectifs des politiques publiques.
KIX-SEED project, I think is timely, has come at the right time when decision makers need to make very, very critical decisions. Not only how students are doing in school, how they are transitioning, but even whether they are learning. And KIX-SEED has that opportunity to actually collect data and create systems and support the ecosystem on data generation at the subnational level. The good thing with the subnational level is because you are getting close to the people, you are getting close to the school children, you are getting close to schools. And when those kind of frameworks, and if KIX-SEEDS succeeds in creating certain frameworks that can support that kind of a system, I think then it will help to harness the data, it will help to synthesize that data and tell us, hey, this is what is happening within the education sector. And I think that's where the KIX-SEED comes in. And that's why I think it can really add value.
The availability of data empowers the subnational level teams to not only plan but also to project, and then improve service delivery for the education sector.
When we go into these countries, we do not work alone by ourselves. Our approach is that we build the capacities of the district leaders or of the leaders of municipalities or counties, wherever we are working. So it's them who will generate this information, which they use to engage with the national level leaders to make decisions that are supposed to improve the way they plan, the way they make decisions. So it is a peer-to-peer kind of arrangement. Ours is to capacitate. We are a catalysts. But at the end of the day, the countries, the districts, or the counties own the entire process. Our dream would be to have a system that is interoperable and that can easily be used by policymakers without necessarily having to rely either on a district statistician or something like that. So that is basically our dream, to have an integrated system that captures what I would call granular data from the primary school, that captures data on teaching, that captures data on progression, that captures data on which student has moved from which school to which school, that captures data on whether students are running or are not running, that captures data about the teachers themselves and about the entire education system. For me, success is not that we should implement the entire country, but rather that the exemplar districts will be able to show evidence that indeed the data can be used for planning, both at the local level and at the local level planning can be used to inform national level planning.
You see, once you get the data, it's not enough to just look at it and be happy about it. I think it needs to be translated into a language, into a format that the users can actually consume, if I may use that word, or be able to be comfortable with, be able to interpret it, be able to say, yes, I think this is what it means for the decisions that I want to take. And I think that's something that can be scaled.
Ultimately, why we are implementing these projects is to see, are they scalable? Can they be adopted? For example, I understand as a continent, we are still behind as regarding to education management information systems. But if we utilize like these master students to do the designs and designing interventions and programs, I think this will be a very big push.